Good morning, everyone. Hi. Hello. People are rolling in again, so I'm going to give it a few minutes here. I guess same as yesterday, I can go through a little bit of housekeeping, not too much here. Um, I see there are more people on camera today than yesterday. That's awesome. I know like Joanne loves seeing people's faces. So do I. It's nice in this weird little virtual world we're in. If you could please stay muted until you are coming up to talk or ask a question, that would be great. We would super appreciate it. Um, I do have the power to mute people, but sometimes it's kind of hard to find whose mic is going in a big room full of people. So I do appreciate that on my end. Let's see here. Questions. If you do have questions, you can put them in the chat. I can typically answer most things. Joanne isn't really able to look at the chat while she's teaching, but we will have time for Q&As. If you do have questions for Joanne, that's the time to ask them, and you will have an opportunity to do that. Let's see. Yeah. So we got a big day today. We're going to be going for about 4 hours and we will take breaks. Yesterday, if you were here yesterday, that was my first time ever doing breakout rooms. And I think I learned a lot. So we'll probably do breakout rooms again today, but thank you for being patient with me yesterday. And hopefully today will be a little bit smoother. So let's see. I think it's 9:03. I'm going to do a little bit of a Joanne introduction for anyone who wasn't here yesterday or that doesn't know Joanne. Yeah, so Joanne is a business and marketing consultant for filmmakers. She's kind of a coach, a business coach for filmmakers. She started as a global marketing consultant for YouTube. So she ran their UK movie rental unit and collaborated with engineers, curatorial teams. So she's worked pretty extensively with hundreds of filmmakers from around the world. She was also the former director of the Alliance Cinema on Lincoln Road in Miami Beach and the founder of IFP Miami and IFP National. So she created and spearheaded the Florida statewide film competition that she told us a little bit about yesterday that provided $200,000 cash and services to a feature film. Now she's working, mentoring clients. Oh my gosh, I don't even know how many it's been, but overall, I think yesterday I said over 70 features, but the last time we did a count, actually, it was close to 100. It might be over 100 now. So fiction, documentaries, 2 PBS series, definitely a ton of shorts in various stages of development from concept to distribution. So her expertise is in film financing and screenwriting. And I guess her passion is just helping getting important films funded and helping people get their work out there and have their voice and change the world. So here's Joanne.
Thank you so much for that, Lexi. It's just interesting sometimes when I hear about things that I have done. And now I'm back in Florida, and so I spent many years here, being very visible as a leader in the film community. We had a cinema on Lincoln Road. I don't know if you've been to Miami Beach, but we had a cinema and a film school on Lincoln Road, and people came from a long, long way away to our cinema and to study with us. We had people move here from New York to study with us, and it was very interesting. And one of the things that I learned was that once filmmakers got past making short films, they really had no choice but to learn how to raise money. And so I was at the time raising money to run a $500,000 a year nonprofit organization. And ever since then, really, I have really tried to pass on those skills to filmmakers. And since then, I quit film for a while, and I moved to San Francisco to start running capital campaigns. And my first job there was to raise $38 million to build a new Y, and then to raise $5 million for youth radio. And I worked on other capital campaigns. Um, and so fundraising is very much part of my DNA. And back then, I used to have two resumes. I used to have a fundraising resume and I used to have a filmmaking resume. And now I'm only one person. I'm not schizophrenic anymore. And a lot of times when I meet filmmakers, they have a bit of that schizophrenia. You know, they're doing one thing over here and they're filmmaking over there. And I always think it's a really great thing to bring it all together and, you know, get moving forward in film. And another thing I see with filmmakers is that I am convinced that filmmakers are the most creative people in the world, and that that creativity that you all use for creating films, for coming up with ideas for documentaries, for executing, for implementing, all of these skills that you have actually are really great when it comes to raising money. Very, 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 very useful skills. But usually when I meet filmmakers, they haven't kind of put that two and two together, and they haven't realized that they already have incredible skills to be able to switch into the fundraising mode, you know? And I'm pretty convinced that in the 21st century, filmmakers need to be able to raise money no matter how far you get in your career, that it's always going to be a part of it. I have clients who are, you know, really, really advanced in their careers, and they just get to be better film fundraisers, better filmmakers, better fundraisers. So yesterday, for I see some people who were not here yesterday. Yesterday, what we did was we went over a few things, and the first thing that we did was we looked at vision. And in a very short time, people came up with some beautiful visions for themselves, as filmmakers, and for their financial lives, and for some other things. We had a few lovely homes built around the world as part of the visions. And then we looked a little bit at budgeting. And I started out with the kind of fundamental budget, which is the budget to just pay your bills, you know, your basic budget just to pay your bills. I find that often I meet filmmakers who become my clients who are not aware of how much their bills are, who are not paying their bills, who are living on credit cards and on savings, or who are working crazy amounts of time so that they don't get the time to be able to work on their own creative work. But all kinds of things that are just not really helpful. So when I think about budgeting, I want to start with that. Let's make sure that the basic bills are covered. Then let's add a little fun budget so that you can enjoy some things, whether it's vacation or, like I was talking about, me and my gyms right now, you know. But add some fun in there, and then start to think about, in a separate way, where the money is going to come from to pay for the creative work for the films. So we looked at that. And today, I'm going to start pretty early on with looking at some of our limiting beliefs. And this to me is just incredibly, incredibly important, because with everybody has limiting beliefs about money. It doesn't really matter who you are. But if we can actually find out that these are limiting beliefs and they're not actual truths, that's kind of the first step. And I think I mentioned yesterday, I spoke to a filmmaker the other day, and she listed about 7 different limiting beliefs just in a row. She was like, because I've never made any money before, and I don't know that I'm going to make any money out of this project either, but I want to do it anyway because maybe if I do this project, then maybe I'll get something else that I'll earn money from it. It was just like bam, 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 And she was clear that all that stuff was true and didn't have any kind of insight into how she's actually creating her reality with those limiting beliefs. So what I want to start with today is to spend a little time looking at what our limiting beliefs are currently, and then we're going to end the day looking at the 7 types of fundraising, which is one of my favorite things to teach. And one of the things about that I want to say now that's really important. I just was hired as a consultant by this fabulous documentary film organization I'm involved with called Brown Girls Doc Mafia. And myself and another producer were hired to consult on some very, very successful and sophisticated documentary proposals. And that we had a full written proposal, we had a full budget, we had a 20-minute teaser trailer, whatever that thing is called, selects. And we had all these different materials to look at and analyze and go over and so on. And the filmmakers had all been quite successful already in raising money from film grants. And very impressive work, all of them. And what I saw was that I kept kind of repeating myself over and over again to these people because none of them had tried to raise money in any other way whatsoever. So given that there are 7 types of fundraising, why would we want to limit ourselves only to one? So in their case, it was writing grants, and anyway, so we're going to get into that later on today, but we're going to start with the limiting beliefs. So yesterday I asked some questions, and I sent out an email and I asked some questions about what you already know about your thoughts about money. And I'm not going to ask you to share these things because I don't know if people are aware of this, but money is kind of the final taboo subject. If I were teaching a class on sex, it would be easier to talk about than to talk about money. It really is the last taboo. So I'm not going to ask you to share stuff publicly that's private or anything about like being ashamed about things to do with money. But I just want to have you think about some of these things that might have come up. So the questions I asked were, what is your first memory about money? What is one thing about your relationship with money that you feel ashamed about? And when was the last time you gave money away? And I'll just talk about myself with these 3 things. So my first memory about money is that I grew up in a pretty privileged background, I would say. We, in the sense that, we had money to pay the bills, we had a car, we had a house, and in our family, with my cousins and my uncles and so on, we were the best off, and everybody looked up to my father. He had moved to England from Trinidad and Tobago. He had started out in a business with a couple of other people. Then he went on to business for himself, and so we were the image of success. I think today it's not that incredibly successful, but when you are better off than everybody else, it's success. So but in this privilege that I grew up in, I did not experience the kind of money generosity from my father that my father gave to other people. So, as an example, people from the family would come and he would help them with money and everything. And when I was 11, I passed an exam and got into a very high-powered small girls' school. And in England, this is where you sort of start on the stepping up the class system. So I got into this very high-powered girls' school on scholarship, and there, all of a sudden, everybody was wealthier than me. Everybody was richer than me. And when I went to my friends' houses, their fathers were bank managers and architects and those kind of things. And they came home. I would be shocked. I'd go over to tea at my friend's house, and their father would come home at 5:30, and I'd be shocked. I never saw my father in the evenings. He was always at work. He was always out at work. And so I would be like, oh my God, your father's home. I just didn't know that was something that dads did. And so at this school, when I was about 11 or 12, I guess it was, that was a few years ago, everybody in my class had pocket money. And so back then, we were still in shillings and sixpence, so everybody got like 2 and 6, I think it was, when I was about 11 or 12. Everybody got 2 and 6. And over the years, each year, as we got older, the pocket money would go up. And so eventually, when I was maybe 16 or 17, people were getting maybe £5 a week for pocket money or something like that. And what happened in my family was that every now and then, once in a blue moon, wow, I still feel shame about this. I've told this story. I have not told it publicly before. Once in a blue moon, my father would give me and my sister sixpence. And it would be maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, or something like that. He would give me sixpence. And there was never any kind of, and then more is coming, or it's coming again. It was just sixpence. And as I said, over the years, all the girls in my school were getting their weekly pocket money, and they were saving up for things, and they were buying things with their pocket money, or they were squirreling it away, or whatever they wanted to do with their money. But I never had any money. I never had any of my own. And then I got into university. I was the first person in my family to go to university. I never heard that phrase until I came to America. I grew up in England. I never heard that phrase about being the first person to go to college in the family. But I was the first person to go to college in the family. And the government assessed that my father needed to give £300 a semester towards my university schooling. So everything was covered, housing, books, tuition, things like that. Everything was really covered, but the £300 was really food. That was my food money. So the first semester of school, I think we all went up together to college, and my dad gave me £300, and I spent it over that first semester. And the second semester I was going by myself, so I packed up my car and I was getting ready to drive off, and I suddenly remembered, and I went running back in the house, and I said, I forgot my £300. And my father hit the roof, absolutely lost it, screaming at me and all this. How dare I tell him that he had to give me £300? And he never gave me another penny while I was at college. For the 3 years that I was in college, I never had another penny from my father. And it's interesting telling these stories, because that second one did not bring up shame for me, but the first one did, about the pocket money. That one actually brought up shame, telling this publicly for the first time. So over the years, one of the things that I have really done, I've done a massive amount of work on my relationship with money. And one of the things that I have learned, there's a phrase for it now, which is financial trauma. And so some of us carry financial trauma, and what the impact on me was that I started out with this constant experience of never having any money, never having any money, and but being surrounded by a family that did have money, but I never had any money. So I developed this belief that other people could have money, but I couldn't have money, or that there was abundance for other people, but not for me, or that other people could be successful, but not me. So I developed all kinds of thoughts around these things when actually it was just somebody misbehaving towards their daughter. I mean, that's really, what it is. It's not, it's just that, it's actually got very little to do with me, how my father behaved, right? But I had all these kind of beliefs, and I started working on money stuff, oof, I don't know, about 20 years ago. And I remember my first thing was I said, oh, I want to learn the value of a quarter, because I felt that I didn't have a connection with money, that money somehow didn't exist for me in some way or other. So I remember that. I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to do figure out the value of a quarter, and then it can go up to $1, and then it can go up to $20, and then it can go up to $100, and sort of build a connection with money that I didn't have from the way that I grew up. So there really is now. I was just talking to a friend of mine today. She's a writer in the healthcare industry, and she specializes in addiction, and she's going to switch her specialization to financial trauma, and looking at how growing up with trauma, with I also grew up with violence, that growing up with these things can impact our relationship to money. Now, you may very well all have come from wonderful families where there was no financial trauma passed on from generation to generation, which is probably, really what was going on in my family. One of the stories my mother told me was that her mother lost 3 children because of poverty. And I will always remember that due to 2 died at birth, and 1 died at the age of 5. But my mother always said those children would not have died if it hadn't have been for poverty. So we not only get the stories from our parents, but we get the intergenerational stories about money. So that's part of it. That's sort of our own stories as human beings, and some of us have different experiences, or we all have different experiences. But then on the other side, there's the stories that we're told as filmmakers, the stories that society tells us as filmmakers. And so the most common one that filmmakers are told is you can't make a living as a filmmaker. Parents tell their kids, you can't make a living as a filmmaker, you need to become a doctor, or you can't make a living as a filmmaker, you need to become an engineer, or whatever that is. And what I find that especially my clients are so passionate about their filmmaking that they may have actually gone to film school, but then gone into another career, and then later on come back to it and just say, you know what, this thing doesn't let me sleep, this thing doesn't let me go, I still want to do it, even though everybody says don't do it, everybody in my family is against it, all my friends think I'm an idiot, whatever people are saying, right? So maybe, we're filmmakers, but maybe our family doesn't really support that, but our society doesn't really support it either, And I was sharing this the other day. Right before COVID, I was at an event. There were about 100, 150 people at this event, and it was an event for filmmakers and actors. And there were several teachers, including myself, who were invited to speak. We each had about 5 minutes to speak or something like that. And I got up and I talked about my work with filmmakers, and how I help filmmakers raise money. And another teacher, an acting coach, got up after me, and she was talking about acting. And then she said, just sort of in passing, she said, well, we all love acting so much, and we're so passionate about it. And of course, we know we're never going to make any money at it, but, we still love it anyway. And I was absolutely shocked. And for a minute, I was thinking, I was like, what can I do to make it clear to everybody in this room that is not true? Maybe I should jump up and fly across the room at her and grab her by the throat or something. But I didn't really know what to do. And but I just felt as though here I was in a room that had specifically gathered 100, 150 actors and filmmakers together, and they were being told they could never earn any money doing what they did. And I just am horrified by this. I find actors actually particularly get it. They really get it from their teachers. I don't know what's up with that, but I'm not an acting teacher, but actors really get it. I had a client, she said to me, I've worked for a whole year with my favorite acting teacher. And I said, what did you get out of working with your favorite teacher for a year? And she said, well, he told me I just don't go deep enough. I'm like, what? What is that? But that's common. That's just very common for the kinds of things that acting teachers tell actors. So I think that our culture is always kind of anti-art or anti-creativity. The school system is kind of designed to push us towards left brain thinking, left brain work. And over the years, I've done a lot of work. I love working with young people. I thought I was going to be a youth development person, for a long part of my life. And I would teach film, and I would teach music production and business of music and different things like that to kids. And they love it, and they're great, and they just catch on instantly. But in school, they would be expected to work in a way that was never prioritizing their right brain. It was always prioritizing their left brain. And some of us are not left brain people. I think artists tend to have a very big, strong right brain, be extremely creative, think conceptually and things like that. And our school system doesn't particularly reward that. Our school system tends to want to funnel people towards data and I'm not saying this right, but towards everything to do with the left brain. When I came to America, I was absolutely shocked because I came to the University of Miami, and I was a teaching assistant, teaching English composition. Has anybody here taken English composition? All Americans should raise their hands. People outside America don't know what English composition is. Just in case you didn't know that, people outside America have never heard of English composition. And so I was given the English composition textbook, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, what is this? It's like a grammar book, and I'm very, very good at languages. So I had studied German and French and Spanish and Italian. And I was given a book that was teaching me English the same way as I learned a foreign language. And that's how Americans are taught English. It makes no sense to me at all. Never heard of it in England. I think I was taught grammar when I was 17 for the first time. We were never taught that in England. Americans don't understand that. But apparently we can write. Apparently, we can speak without having to study English composition. So, to me, that's like trying to teach people to write with their left brain. It's just, that's not what your left brain is for. That's not what the creative brain is up to at all. So, all of these limiting beliefs really um, color the way that we see the world and the way that filmmakers think about themselves in the world. So, what I would like to do is to take, like yesterday, we did a 10-minute break where we did writing on vision. And today, I would like to sort of go the opposite direction and take a 10-minute writing session on limiting beliefs. And we're going to take 10 minutes. We're going to do a little writing exercise. You can use the questions that I sent out in the prompt yesterday. What is your first memory about money? That's a really good one to start with. Often the first memory that we have about money is kind of things that color the way that the rest of our lives are. One thing that you're ashamed of about money. I was once in a class about money, and I was put in a group, and the four of us, we did share. I'm not going to ask you to share about your money shame, but we were asked to share out loud about our money shame. And the group of four that I was in, every single one of them had stolen money. Every single one of them had had that experience. That was not my experience, but apparently it was a very common experience. And what was the last time you gave money away? And we'll come back to that. But there are many other things. What about, what do you think about the possibility of earning money as a filmmaker? What do you think about the possibility of having a successful career as a filmmaker? What are the thoughts that come into your mind when you ask yourself those questions? So I'm going to set a timer, and I'm going to ask you to just write for 10 minutes. I'm going to play some music. You can turn off the volume or not, and we'll come back together in 10 minutes. Okay? Here we go. 10 minutes. All right. Let's come back, everybody. I know we always ask for people to come on camera. It's so nice. So I feel as if I'm not here by myself. Oh, me and Lexi, we're here. Mark's here. David's here. Nice to meet you, David. Josh, so good to see you. Elizabeth, Ryan, JJ, Timothy, Lisa. Oh, hi, Lisa. Nice to see you in person instead of on Clubhouse. The limiting beliefs that we have, as I said, to me, the first step is to actually realize they're not true. You know, they're a belief. You know, that I think is the first step, and it's kind of interesting when our beliefs are challenged, when somebody has the audacity to say, actually, that's not true. You know, how do we respond? You know, and you know, as I said, I'm a fundraiser. I help my clients raise money. And I've been saying recently, you know, there are two kinds of people in the world. There are the kinds of people that when they start fundraising, they hide under the covers. They get, you know, they'll get super shy and they're like, oh my God, no, I don't want to come out. And then there are the kind who attack me. And, you know, it seems to me as though everybody takes one of those two paths. They either attack me or no, there is another path. The third path is to just move forward through all of our fear and money shit, as I like to call it, our money shit that gets in the way. So as you've been writing, I'm hoping that some of these thoughts have come to the surface, And one of the great things about bringing this stuff to the surface is that when they come to the light, sometimes, have you ever heard yourself say, now I'm saying that out loud, it sounds silly, you know? Now that I see it written down, it doesn't sound right. Um, but as I said, it could be something mild, it could be something traumatic. So next, I would like for you to go into breakout rooms and share some of what you thought about, some of what you remembered. As I said, don't feel obliged. If you did write down something that you're ashamed of about money and you feel safe to share it, sure, go ahead and share it. But you don't have to do that. That may be something you just want to keep private for now. I would say, though, that if you have unearthed something that you feel ashamed of and that maybe you haven't shared with anyone, that you do find somebody to share with, not necessarily today, but a friend or your partner or somebody in your family, whatever. But when we're carrying shame, that is always going to be detrimental and to hold us back. It's like I think of shame as like trying to carry 4 or 5 suitcases all at the same time, and you're like carrying all this weight, and it's really taking up all of your time and energy, but it feels like it's normal. That's how I see shame as being. So, Lexi, we're gonna do the breakout thing again.
Yeah, I did have just a few words about the big breakout rooms. After yesterday, yesterday I was just trying to make sure everyone was in a room. Today I don't think as long as there's 2 of you in a room, I don't think I'm going to move anyone because I don't want to cut anyone off while they're speaking. Um, this automatically breaks everyone into even groups, but I know not everyone, some people are listening on their phones. Not everyone's able to like accept going into a breakout room. So I'm just kind of leave it be as much as I can. Also, just you know, take turns talking. I'm a talker, so I get it. Make sure everyone in your group has a chance to talk. So this can really be like collaborative and a sharing process. So I'm gonna go ahead and
And
break everyone
uh,
up.
well, wait a minute. So I would like to have 3 in each room. And also, although we have a specific exercise that we're doing, this is also our time for meeting other filmmakers, finding out what other filmmakers are doing, building your community of filmmakers. I always say, with my clients, if you're lucky enough to get any of my clients in your room, um, that my clients are a very special group. My clients are all raising money and making films. They're not living in fantasy and talking about making films. I mean, they do talk about making films, but they're raising money and making movies and dealing with the painful experience of being willing to address their money shit in order to go out and raise money and make films. So they're a very special group. So we're going to have groups of 3. We're going to have 15 minutes. And so try and divide the time and use the time to get to meet some more filmmakers. You might be lucky enough to get a filmmaker from another country, which is brilliant. And we'll see you back in 15 minutes. So I got to pop into some of the rooms. I was just making sure everybody got to share. Did everybody get to share in their group? Good. You're all very well behaved. So somebody was just said to me, "Oh, we're getting to know each other," and I just thought, how often in life do we actually get to know each other and our money shit? Because that's just not what we talk about. We don't go up to people and say, "Hey, how are you doing financially? What are your money beliefs?" We don't just, as I said, this is the last taboo. Money, talking about money is the last taboo. So first of all, congratulations, everybody. Did you find in your group that you wanted to talk about other things? Did you want to change the topic? Yeah, yeah.
No, we had a brave leader. JJ just dove right in, which gave me the courage to dive right in, and Melissa. So,
Awesome.
yeah, we dove
Awesome.
in.
That is great. That is great. So who would like to share a little bit about just about this experience? And I just sort of want to be very gentle with this because this is not easy stuff, you know, and we don't all know each other very well. I mean, we're all here because we're filmmakers and we want to learn, but you know, just we can be just make sure that we're kind and we're all listening. So who would be willing to share something about the experience that they just had? Mark, go ahead.
Um, I was in a room with two other people. I leaned into my own willingness to be vulnerable and share, and I immediately felt held and connected with the people. There was approval for the conversation, and then as the conversation evolved, I also found out that people were really different than me, and they had their own relationships to money that were different than mine. There
Mm.
was no judgment. I didn't feel any condemnation or any kind of negative reactions at all. And what I felt after having shared my part of it was I felt lighter.
Ah, and is it your experience that you don't normally get to talk about this kind of thing with people?
No, because I'm a trained coach and I'm very intimate and authentic and transparent with people.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Even about money?
Not usually about money, but the practice of vulnerability is something
Sure.
I'm very deep into. So I was able to get at my discomfort relatively easily.
Mm, mm. Nice. Well, thanks for doing that. Thanks for being brave enough to do that. JJ, what would you like to share?
Well, I would like to share that I realized that money is a taboo. I hadn't really, because you hear it so much every day. You know, we wake up and there's money being talked about on the television, and money that you think about how much money do I have in my wallet, in my bank account. You know, money's always going through our heads, so you don't really think that it is also a taboo, you know. And talking about it here with others, sharing my experiences in terms of getting to know what money is growing up, and then having to make money or and make decisions about money and stuff. I realized, oh wow, Joanne's right, you know, this is a taboo. And in terms of like growing up not talking about money in the family. You know, it's like,
Right,
why didn't we talk about
right,
money in the family? Well, because it was
right.
taboo. You know, so that was nice.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. Let's have some of our women filmmakers share something. Alexandra, go ahead.
Yeah, we were talking. It was actually really nice. We realized we were all female filmmakers of color,
Ah,
but
nice.
in our group. But one thing is I never really thought about my relationship with money, and I realized that while there was some shame, I also realized that I got to experience it from both ends of the spectrum.
What does both ends mean?
When I was younger, it seemed like we had all the money in the world. You know, we lived in Chicago. They had what's called a condominium, which is which and we had grand Christmas parties and all that stuff. We moved to Tennessee, and our lifestyle kind of continued that way for the most part. We got what we wanted for Christmas. And then when I was 10, because my parents were ministers, and when I was 10, they got moved to churches in North Carolina. Well, my sister happened to be in a junior in high school, and they didn't want to mess up her credits. So instead of moving to North Carolina, we stayed in Tennessee, and my parents bought a house. What I didn't know growing up is that until that point, the church was actually paying the household bills.
Mm, mm,
So I went from, for the most part, being able to ask for what I want, even though my parents would say sometimes, okay, so is this coming out of your allowance or is
mm,
this a gift?
hmm.
it changed.
Mm-hmm.
I was used to getting paid for good grades. I was used to getting an allowance, and for the most part, if I wanted something, I could get it. And that completely changed to, it's like we can't afford this right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was very greatly resentful about it.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, and I love that you said you hadn't thought about your relationship with money before, but
Yeah, so now whenever I get money, it always disappears within a week because I'm always
Mhm.
getting all the stuff that I want instead of worrying about the stuff that I actually need.
Wow, what a realization. That's amazing. It's just amazing what happens when we put a little attention on things, because normally our lives are so busy, especially filmmakers. We're the busiest people, and so we put a little attention on something, and look what comes up. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Ryan, go ahead.
Um, I guess in what I was writing down, I was realizing I'm a child of divorce and many divorces. And when my mom and my dad divorced, it was like when I lived with my mom, she got custody, but we didn't have a lot, and my dad had a lot, and he continued to make a lot of money. And he married this woman who didn't like to help me out at all. I was an only child too. So it was always this push and pull of child support and all that, and it was awful. Um, and then, but later on, I realized that because I didn't have everything I wanted all the time, I think, and knowing how hard my dad worked, and he would actually give my mom money, like cash, without my stepmom knowing, just to like so I could get school clothes or whatever. But then
Right.
later I was like, I was kind of resentful for a lot of that. But now I realize that it gave me more of an entrepreneurial spirit of like, well, I'm going to create what I don't have. Because at 17, I left home and I completely did everything on my own, put myself through college, all of that. So never have help from my parents. Um, and I think it's made me who I am today. So I can't be too resentful for that. Um, so that's just that was what I kind of came up in my writing. I was like, well, it's actually
Yeah.
a positive thing,
Awesome.
you know.
Awesome. Well,
So,
they say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? So
exactly.
yeah, you took a hard situation, turned it around. But what's interesting is that um, it's always possible to take an experience like that, which seems very negative, and stick with being negative about it, or find the positive in it. I mean, those are two choices that we have.
Yeah.
And what's really great about looking at this stuff is to get to the point of understanding there is a choice. I have a choice. I can see this as a negative, I could see this as a positive. Which would I like to choose? I think that's incredibly powerful. But thank you so much for sharing that. Who else would like to share something with the group? Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Hello again, everyone. This has been very fun looking at this stuff. So I grew up in a very strict religious upbringing. Well, my mom was Amish and Mennonite. My father's Mennonite, but I grew up in a very rich home. We had our family homestead. It's been our families for like 3-4 generations. So as an adult, I have received inheritance since they've made their transition on. And so we really were very, very abundant in land and heritage. And we grew our own gardens, but we worked hard. And it was just never quite enough when it came to the money. My dad had a job at the local factory as an electrician. He also had his Yoder electrician that he would do then at night. And then he would do stuff for people at the church, but then they wouldn't pay their bills. So he was like working for charity. Meanwhile, I hadn't had my first pair of my own shoes until I was like age 11. And always I was hand-me-down clothes, but I have 5 brothers and a sister, so there's 7 of us that we back living on I guess, blue collar wages at a factory doing electric. I mean, it's amazing that they were able to do it and make ends meet, but they were always discussing, okay, should we keep this light on or pay this bill next? And I don't know. Long story short, what do you want to know? I've seen the pattern that I have in my life that I always kind of settle for second best. Even with my first car that I bought, this bright, shiny that brought me so much joy. But I was like, I don't know. Can I trust the dealer? And then I went to somebody that I knew through my job. They had a dealership, a friend, a dealership. It was a little bit more used and not quite so sparkly and shiny. It didn't bring me as much joy, but it was functional and it worked. So I went ahead and went with that one. And well, there you go. And I guess the shame about my relationship with money comes from, so when I left the farm, because I worked every day of my life, we worked, everybody did their part to make things go, and you do your part. But we did have, like we would have coins for our what do you call it, your savings or your allowance, there you go. But when I left the farm, it was due to the religious abuse, physical abuse. Really, they were trying to break my will. So I ran from the church and from the family at that point. And I was just bound and determined not to go back as the prodigal child. So I'm sharing this to get to relieve the shame that I have around this space, because I want it to be gone. I don't want to carry this baggage. And so I worked at this restaurant for, I think it was, I got a week, or every 2 weeks you get paid. After the taxes came out, the amount of money that was left was just like, I felt like a slave. I couldn't believe it. I had to how am I going to keep a roof over my head, clothes on my back, shoes on my feet? And then I needed a doctor to go get shots before the high school. This was the first time for me to go to a public high school. They wouldn't let me come back the next year without my doctors that I had these shots, which is understandable. But at the time, I'm like, how am I going to afford this on these pennies? So I looked in the newspaper and I found a job at the Lipstick Saloon Bar and Grill. And I started out as a waitress. But what I didn't share is that my father died when I was 11 by a drunk driver. So now I'm serving alcohol. And I'm also using my looks, and I'm in a place where, you don't have sex before you're married. Now these women, they're damn naked. So I have the shame around that, but I'm using this ability to flirt and to get more tips and all this. So it's tied into how I look. And so that was my second job. But my first job was like slave labor. My second job was using these things that brought a lot of shame to me. So I'm happy to share that with you, to release it and air out my baggage.
Thank you so much. You brought me to tears. It wasn't the content of what you said that made me cry. It was the idea that you were willing to publicly say your shame so that you could release it. I said many, many times, you don't need to share anything that you're ashamed of, but you took an opportunity, and I just so applaud you for that. And one of the things that I think is really amazing about this, money is a taboo subject. All of the things we carry, all the baggage we carry about money is a taboo subject. But I just wanted everybody in the room to notice how listening to people share their stories makes us feel so much closer to them. There's a level of intimacy that comes from sharing this kind of thing. And it doesn't seem to be that you wouldn't imagine sharing about money, our money shit, would actually make us feel closer, but it does. It really, really does. Is there anybody else who would like to share something? Come on, be brave. Be brave. Be brave. Courtney, I think you want to share something. Courtney Flynn. Alberta, Dr. Alberta, go ahead.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Oh, so go ahead.
Yes,
Or
go ahead. Go ahead.
oh, okay. Uh, well, for me, I think one of the challenges I realize I have around money is maybe this feeling comfortable about where the money coming from. So so you find that if like maybe I'm working for the government and the money coming from the government, okay. But when I start thinking about like I sourcing the money for myself
Mm.
from people, like I suddenly realize that is where having some level of challenge. And
Mm.
which really in a sense shouldn't be, but it was fascinating because like today I got a little more of a chance to unpack where the block might be coming from in
Mm.
terms of I'm differentiating the source of the money, and I feel it's okay for the government to give me money, but it's not okay for people to give me money.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And that there was one other thing. Um, oh, and then going further with that, I think is like maybe rejection in a way, because if the government giving you money, then you kind of do have to worry about the rejection
They're not
barrier.
allowed to reject you.
But when it's the people, then you have to face a no, which I mean they're entitled to, but it's more you and this dealing with this rejection. So probably it's not even that you have a problem asking for the money, but you have a problem dealing with the rejection from asking for the money.
Okay,
So
so Dr. Alberta, I happen to know that you have asked some people for money, right? And has anybody rejected you?
uh, no, they may say not well, no, they reject me.
They didn't reject you, right? Okay. Did they
Yeah.
say no? Did some of them say no?
Oh, they might just say, I think all said yes, but maybe the timeline for the yes will be different.
Are you telling me everybody said yes to you?
Well, I would have to say so, but the timeline for the yes would
Excuse
be
me.
different.
Excuse me. Everybody said yes.
Well, it
That's
reflected
amazing.
our
No, but that's amazing, because you started out by saying what I really think is everybody's fear, that people are going to reject me. And what do we mean by that? We think people are going to um, dislike us or hate us or be mean to us or say something horrible or but in the end that's not what happened at all. What happened was people said yes. That's, and this is what happens over and over and over and over again. you know People start asking and they're like, oh, everybody says yes. I remember the first time I ever helped somebody with a crowdfunding campaign. um, he raised about $10,000, and at a certain point he said he said every single person I asked gave money. And I was like, that is unheard of. Like 100%, 100% of everybody you ask is giving you money. That is just crazy. But I think that we're expecting completely the opposite. And even though you've had an opposite experience, you still kind of expect somehow that there's going to be some rejection. It's interesting, right? But I think that it's much more to do with our beliefs about money than about reality. That's what I'm trying to say, that there's a difference between what we believe and what we think and reality. In reality, most people are like, oh my gosh, what do you mean you're making a movie? What's your movie about? What are you doing? That's really what people say. So thank you so much for sharing that. Let's see. I'm going to see if I can get one more. If somebody wants to share something, who would like to share? David! Yeah, I haven't met you before. Nice to meet you. You're muted. You're muted, David. David, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Hi.
You were just sharing pearls of wisdom and we missed it.
No, I think I missed yesterday because I'm in Japan. So I'm from Canada, by the way. I'm in Japan, and I
I have a
over
client
here.
in Japan. I have
Oh,
to
really?
I have to introduce you. Yes.
Okay, so I messed up the dates because we're like
You're
12
forgiven.
hours. We're 12 hours. We're a day
Exactly.
ahead. I always still do that. Anyway, and speaking of crowdfunding, I was telling my group that I went to film school in Scotland and at the University of Edinburgh. And in our case, like they gave us like £700. We had to make a short film, or you could make a feature if you wanted to. But anyway, we made a short film, and they gave us £700, and they said you have to go crowdfund the rest.
Uh-huh.
So we had no choice. So it's just like go out there and do it. I was just like, okay, well, if you got to do it, then I want the record for trying to close my goal as soon as possible. But anyway, like it was a month campaign. I believe I raised about 3,000 or 4,000 pounds for my film, and everybody, like a lot of my friends, like people were coming out of the woodwork, people I didn't know, and my friends, and some of my friends were like, well, like you're $10 away from $3,000. I hate to see an uneven number, so I'll close the gap. And it was just amazing how everybody kind of just gave money. I didn't expect it to go so well in terms of crowdfunding.
That is a beautiful story. And I had a client, I mentioned her yesterday actually, but I had this super shy, very, very young client, and she raised $3,600 on her crowdfunding campaign after she tried to persuade me. She didn't want to do any raising. She didn't need any money. All of that stuff. And then she finally did it. And the thing that she said that I thought was so beautiful, and it's a little bit like what you're saying here, is when she originally started working with me, she was frightened to make her first film. But then you find out the fundraising is way more frightening than making a film. That's way more scary. And so she raised this money, and she said when it came to the first day of production, she felt completely surrounded and held by this community of people who had all stepped up to support her. So exactly. She didn't feel alone on set. She felt like she had all these people there. That's great. Totally. So, David, I have to say that is the first time I've heard anybody say they went to film school and were required to raise some money.
Yeah. So they gave us they said, here's £700. And then he said, the rest is up to you. You can do it however you want. You can go back to your home country. You can hire professional, you can hire someone in Hollywood. Like it was totally like free market, if you want to put it that way.
It's interesting because I have a client who went to film school here at the University of South Florida, I think it is, in Tallahassee, and he was particularly required to not fundraise.
Really?
Particularly required to not fundraise. And what's interesting about that is that, I mean, he and I worked together, and his big dream in life was to go, he was from Tobago, and his big dream in life was to go to film school in America. And so he got a Fulbright.
Oh.
Because he was going to go into debt to go to film school. And I was like, over my dead body. So he and I worked together, and he ended up getting a Fulbright. So he got every single thing paid for, and accommodation, school, tuition, everything. But when he went to make his master's thesis film, they were not allowed to raise money, which makes a complete distinction between the students who come from families with money and the students who come from families without money.
Wow.
And I was kind of livid, but so I'm glad to hear your story.
Yeah, for us, like like all the students in the master's class, we were required, like we everybody had launched a crowdfunding campaign. So it was almost like we were just kind of like looking at each other, kind of like thinking, like you kind of basically
Will you
had
give
to
to
do
my
it.
campaign?
Exactly.
That's very nice story, and lovely to meet you. And I'm going
Thank
to
you.
introduce you to my client in Japan.
Great.
Yes, so thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
did I miss anybody who wanted to share? Okay, so we're going to at 2 o'clock, we're going to have a break for 15 minutes like yesterday. And then when we come back, we're going to do the 7 types of fundraising. And in the meantime, I would like to talk to you a little bit about the idea of working with me. And yesterday, JJ jumped up and I said, so we were talking about crowdfunding, and I said, how would you feel if you had 12K in your bank account in the next 6-7 weeks, and what would you do with it? And JJ jumped up and said, I would hire Joanne and she could help me raise more money. I just thought that was so great, because sometimes when I talk about what I do, I sometimes think I'm just way too complicated, and that was just very, very simple. I help people raise money. I help people raise money and make films. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the way that I work with my clients. And I call myself a business coach because I want to separate myself a little bit from the film industry. I don't work the way the film industry works. In the film industry, my title would be more like consulting producer, I think. And basically, whatever my clients need help with, I help them. I have clients who have made many, many films. I have clients with 5 films coming out in 2022. There was a month right before COVID hit where I had 4 feature films in production in the same month. That was wild. And so basically, as my clients are working through their fundraising and their filmmaking, I just help them with whatever they need. I have clients ranging from people who have never made a film before to Lexi's husband, who's the director of a film school, to Thomas Allen Harris, who's a very well-known filmmaker in the documentary space, teaches at Yale, has 3 films funded by ITVS, a TV series funded by PBS. We've raised millions of dollars together. We're raising $2 million to make his next film. So I have a range of clients, but the way that I see it is wherever somebody is at with their filmmaking skills, that doesn't mean to say that their fundraising skills match those filmmaking skills. So I have clients who are extremely good fundraisers, extremely good, but then still we can take it to the next level. And I have a vision for all my clients that one day they will be raising money themselves, and then they will also hire me to raise money for them as well, but that's down the road. What I am doing now is I offer a program, I call it the Film Box Office Success Formula. And in the Film Box Office Success Formula, success has 7 letters in it, and there are 7 steps in my program. And I've been coaching for many years. I have filmmakers making films all the time, raising money all the time. But I just recently came up with this because somebody challenged me and said, do you have a method? And I thought I didn't, because every client is different, every filmmaker is different, every film is different. But the fact is that there is a methodology that I have. And the first thing that I start out with is S stands for script, and we create a marketable script. Even my documentary filmmakers, we work on starting out with what is going to be something that can reach an audience, something that can be marketable. I'll give you an example. I have a client who came to me, and she very much grew up in the Grateful Dead community. She was a Deadhead. I didn't know anything about Deadheads until I saw her movie, and she had a lot of interviews with people who also, you know, followed the dead around the country and did all that thing, and everybody had it was a lot of nostalgia, a lot of people having happy memories about their time following the Grateful Dead. And at the end of the movie, she talks about how when she was 16 years old, she was being sexually abused at home, in her family, and in her high school. And as a way to try to escape, she was living in her car. And she had decided to kill herself. And a girl approached her, found out that she owned a car, approached her and said, would you drive us to this concert, which happened to be the Grateful Dead? They said, would you drive us to this concert, and we have an extra ticket, we'll give you a ticket to go to the concert. So she decided to drive them to the concert, and she thought, well, I'll kill myself afterwards. So they go to the Grateful Dead concert, and she ended up basically being adopted into this community. I assumed that the Deadheads were all about drugs and sex and rock and roll, but apparently they had this very clear value system about love and caring and so on, and they took care of her and basically brought her back to life, saved her life. And so I suggested to her that she had a couple of choices. She could make a movie that was really for the Deadhead community, which is a very passionate community. They love the dead, they love their nostalgia, they love their artifacts from those days, you know, very, very passionate. Or she could make a movie for me. I don't know anything about the Grateful Dead, but she has a story there that I could very much identify with. I was abused at home, and I very much identify with her story of having to find family outside her birth family. And so we ended up bringing that story to the front of the film and very much changed the film. And that movie is coming out next month. And it has a very different audience now. She chose to go with the audience that she could reach who are not Deadhead fans. She's still going to reach the Deadheads, but so even with documentary, we can look at how we can make our film marketable. It's the same film that she brought to me, but it's an entirely different film, you know, and it's a marketable film. So we start out with, what can we do to make this film as marketable as possible? The U in success stands for you make the film, because I find a lot of filmmakers have got stuck at a certain place where they think that somebody is going to come along and make their film for them, and I don't really buy that. Right before my mother died, she told me about when she and my dad got married, and she found an apartment for them to live in. It was in the top half of somebody's house. And my father, who is black, when he went over to the house, they said, oh, we don't have any rooms. So he went and borrowed some money from his friends, or my uncles and everything. And he was the first person in our family to buy a home. And when I heard that story, I was like, oh, that's where I get it from, because I'm just not about to sit around and let people tell me no. I'm just not interested in letting other people decide, I can do this and I can do that. No, I'm just much more interested in what's the path forward. It doesn't matter if the doors are not open. So that's very much me. So U is for you make your film. And then the first C is calculate the value of your film. And we got into that a little bit. It's too complicated for me to get into in this workshop, but knowing the value of your film, to me, is the most fundamental thing for any filmmaker. Knowing how much your film is worth is the most important thing to know. And I find that most filmmakers don't know anything about that, and they haven't thought about it. They haven't thought about what is the value of my film. So I think that before we start fundraising, we need to know what the value of the film is, so that the amount of money that we're raising actually corresponds to what the value of the film is. And then the second C stands for create a distribution plan. And I work very closely with a distributor, so my clients know that I'm talking feature films, by the way, fiction or documentary, but my clients know when they start that they have a distributor that they will be delivering their film to. And that takes away one of the big mysteries of the film industry, where filmmakers are making films and don't know what to do with them when they're made. But I work with a distributor. They know all my clients' films as they're coming along, and every now and then they'll contact me and say, "Excuse me, but where's that film?" And then I get on my client's butt and say, "Where's that film? Get that audio finished," you know. So that's really helpful. And when you know the destination, then it makes it a much clearer path to what you have to do next. A lot of filmmakers are just working, trying to be creative all the time without really knowing what the end point of their work is, what the point of their work is. So when you know that you have distribution, that's really helpful. And then the next letter is E, and that's for we create the easiest fundraising plan for you. And it took me many years to be able to say that, because I don't like to put easy and fundraising in the same sentence. Fundraising is not easy. But what we've been talking about in these 2 days are the reasons it's not easy, in my opinion. I could teach you how to fundraise. I'm going to teach you this afternoon the 7 types of fundraising, and it's not rocket science. You know, what the problem is the internal money shit that we're all carrying that stops us. That stops us from going out and getting the money that we need to make our films. And then the last 2 S's are for start fundraising, start production. And so I think a lot of times filmmakers are kind of start, you know, they want to start production, but I'm like, hold up, let's just get all these other things in place before we start production. And if we have all these other things in place, then production is going to actually happen a lot sooner than we might expect, you know. But I just oh, thank you, Lexi. Awesome. Lexi put it in the chat for us, the 7 steps in the process. So I work with my clients over 3 months, and at the end of the 3 months, they are really clear about how to pitch, how they're going to raise the money, that they have a marketable film that they're making, that they know they have distribution, and they're already going out and asking for money in one or more of the 7 ways of fundraising. So that's what we do. I start with 3 months because I found that some of the concepts that I'm teaching, particularly on the distribution side and the financial side about money, about filmmaking, it's not so much that it's super complicated, but it takes a while for it to sink in. And so I found that it takes about 3 months. There's always a moment at about 2.5 months where I'm like, oh, they got it, you know, and people are ready to go out and really be public with their fundraising and with their asks. So my program is called the Film Box Office Success Formula, and I set up a phone call. Everybody always wants me to be on Zoom, and I'm like, nope, I don't like to be on Zoom. I'm on Zoom as little as I possibly can. We set up a phone call, and it's called a Filmmaker Success Breakthrough Session. and it actually is a really useful process. And I, on the one hand, am looking to see if this is a client that I really can work with, and then my client is also, we're discovering if I can really help you. So far, it mostly seems as though I can, because most filmmakers need to learn how to raise money. Most filmmakers that I meet are not independently wealthy and just show up with a bag of loot and say, hey, I got all this money, I want to make a movie. What we're going to do is Lexi is going to put a link in the chat, and I've opened up I think 5 spaces a week for the next 2 weeks, so I have 10 slots. And if you would like to talk to me about working with me one-on-one and with my group of fabulous clients, please go ahead and fill out that questionnaire. It's gonna there are some questions in there that are going to help you clarify if you want to work with me. So there's the questionnaire. Thank you, Lexi. And so yeah, in the next week or 2 weeks, I would like to talk to you about working with you. And if you are one of the first 10, I didn't tell Lexi this, so I might get into trouble. But if you're one of the first 10 to sign up to talk to me about this, then I'm going to bonus you my Crowdfunding 101 class that I offered yesterday. That is designed to have you work on an online class and raise $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 in the next month and a half, 2 months. With my methodology. It's not like anybody else's methodology. It's not like anything else that's out there. And that's what we do. We raise that money. So I'm going to throw that in as a bonus for the first 10 people who sign up to talk to me about that. So does anybody have any questions? We'll take about 10 minutes before the break. If anybody has any questions that they would like to ask, that would be awesome. Hey, Olivier, how are you? We got to catch up. Denise, yes, go ahead. What's your question?
Hi, thank you. I'm just wondering, I probably need to have a film ready before jumping on doing all this, right?
I would actually say not, because this sounds terrible, but sometimes I start with clients who already have their script or who are already further down the road, and I like to start as early as possible. So if you don't have a film, that is fine. One time I had a client, she was making her first short film with me. Josh probably remembers her. And she was making her first short film with me. And she had dreamt about making this film for the last 17 years. And it was very, very deep process for her. It was about her own experience with domestic violence. She had been in a very, very violent marriage. And oh, great, Alexandra, you jumped on it, yes. And but she had this real deep desire to make this film about her experience. And she had done a little bit of acting, but she'd never made anything. And she said to me in our Filmmaker Success Breakthrough session, she said to me that she had never written one word. After 17 years of dreaming about making this film, she'd never written one word. And for her biggest fear was that she couldn't write anything. And 2 weeks later, we had her script ready. And every now and then she'll write again. This is like 3 years ago. And every now and then she'll write, I just got my film into another film festival. And she's always so shocked and so humble when she gets her film into a film festival. And I'm like, well, wow. And, you know. So no, you don't have to have your film made. One time I started working with somebody who was just about in pre-production. He'd already raised a lot of his money. He was already in pre-production, and we had a great time. And we raise money, and his film is out in distribution and all of that. But if I had been able to work with him earlier, I would have, because I would have asked him to make some very simple changes to the script that would have made it 100 times more marketable.
Mhm.
And that's the thing that I think is really a shame, when filmmakers don't know that stuff and then they go ahead and make a film that people are not as excited to watch as with just a little changes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Denise. And I think I got your email right, by the way.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Anybody else have any questions about this? David in Japan. I will never forget that.
Can you? I don't know if it's possible, but can you give us an idea of like what you mean by a marketable? What's an example of one element of marketability when it comes to a film?
Thank you for asking that question. That was a very good question. So, so you probably know that there are certain genres that are more marketable than others. What genres are more marketable than others?
Off the top of my head, I would say horror, maybe, or uh, yeah, horror, maybe. Yeah, I'll go with horror.
I think
or science
most
fiction.
most filmmakers know horror. Gregory, what do you want to add? You're muted, Gregory. You're muted.
Faith-based.
Faith-based, but you're cheating because you've watched my video, Gregory. Who would know that? Who would know that unless they watched my video? I'm just teasing you. That was very good. You see, you learned a very important lesson there. Okay, Elizabeth, what were you going to add?
Oh, yes. Well, I grew up in that faith-based world, and there's so limited supply, and it's really bad production, but they're hungry for some really good content, but it's a sin to watch the real deal movies. And also one of my friends, 15 years, she's still in that world, and she's like, oh yeah, no, this is definitely has a lot of needing content. So yeah.
Needing content, yes. So most filmmakers would never have a clue that a faith-based movie is that there's what would it be? There's a need in the marketplace for faith-based films. So I'm not saying that everybody here is going to, one of the things I like to say is, by the way, which faith are we talking about here?
Christianity?
Huh?
Christianity?
Yes. I remember years ago, there was this thread on LinkedIn and somebody said, I made a faith-based documentary, where can I sell it? And all these people were saying this and that and this and that. And I just wrote it a little question. Which faith are we talking about? So there's a market for Christian films. That is a bit different than...
But my film is, since I come from that world, is based on that world, is showing kind of the dark side of religion of that world. I don't know if that would be a market inside of there, not inside of that world.
We can't sell that.
No. Okay.
No, I'm teasing you partly, but what I do, I have several faith-based filmmakers right now, and I've sort of put them through a little series of research projects so that they can they're very clear that that's the world they want to be in, which I think for you is a bit different, right? So they really want to be in that world. I have one client who's finishing a film in Trinidad, and she works for her church. She's a construction manager, project manager. She spends all her volunteer time at the church. She spends all her church time at the church. I mean, she wants to be in that world. So great. I think when you don't want to be in that world, it's probably not the right choice, right? So anyway, most filmmakers don't know that there is a hole in the market where faith-based movies. Another one that people don't know about is family films, meaning films for children. Filmmakers get very confused about this, but family films are films that are watched by two audiences. One is children and one is parents with their children. So that's the genre called family. And the distributor that I work with, every now and then he forgets. He calls me. He's like, do you have any clients with family films? Because he's always being asked for family films. How many filmmakers on this call would think about making a film for kids? Olivier, yay! Timothy, yay! Yes, so, well, all I can, Ryan, yes! Claudia, yes. So, what does it feel like when I tell you that there is a distributor desperately looking for family films? How does that change your feeling about your work as a filmmaker? What impact does that have on you? I'm asking you a question. Olivier, you haven't shared yet. What impact does that have when I tell you there's somebody, a distributor, desperate for your content?
I should get working. That sounds, yeah, it sounds like a gateway. I was going to say a door, but that's more than a door.
Exactly. So the thing is with there are certain reasons, as I said, that are internal, and then there are certain reasons that are external, where filmmakers have this belief. I think Alberta put it beautifully, where we think we're going to get rejected. You know, we think we're going to make a film and nobody's going to want to watch it. We think we're going to make a film and nobody's going to want to see it. We think we're going to make a film and certainly nobody's going to pay money for it. And yet, I work with a distributor who knows all of my clients' films and still every now and then calls me out of frustration saying, do you have any family films? Please. And so when you know that there's somebody waiting for your film, waiting for you to deliver your film, it makes a huge difference. And that's the condition for all my clients. They all know that there's somebody waiting for their film, which is a completely different thing than saying, I've got to get myself up in the morning and I've got to find my creativity somewhere for some reason that I don't know what it adds up to. So the genres that are marketable are basically when somebody starts working with me and they're making a feature film, again, I'm talking about feature films, I ask them if they would be willing to make a film in a genre that sells. Now, if we're working in the budget level where we have bankable names, you can make any, yes, Elizabeth, we want to see that film. I want to see that film. But if we're working in the name of, in the bankable talent genre, we can make any genre we want, because we're not selling it on the genre, we're selling it on the names. And yesterday we were using the example of Idris Elba. If you have Idris Elba in a film, it can be a comedy, it can be a drama, it can be a thriller, it can be a horror, it can be an action film, it can be whatever. But it's going to sell. But it's selling because it's Idris Elba who's in the film, okay? If we're in the micro-budget world and we don't have the money for a bankable name, then what most filmmakers do who actually make the transition from shorts to features is they make a drama or a comedy and we cannot sell it. Because everybody on this call would say, I want to make a drama or I want to make a comedy, and the market is saturated with films that are micro budget without names that are dramas and comedies. I have nothing against dramas and comedies. I'm just offering you the possibility that you could make a genre that sells and have a very different experience than most filmmakers who actually get to make their first feature. They make a drama or a comedy and they can't sell it. And what happens is that filmmakers think that distributors suck, that distributors are predatory, that distributors are the problem. And frankly, in many cases, they are. But the fact is that they created a product that could not sell. They set out to create a product that has no marketability. And then what happens is, and this is what I feel like I'm put on the planet to make sure doesn't happen, that they make films that can't sell, they burn themselves out financially, and then they can't go ahead and make a second film. So I don't want anybody to do that. Go ahead, Olivier.
If we're working on a documentary, and like, you know, how would I know, or how would I test the market? How would I kind of like get a feeler? Like, things exist in this realm, but not in the way that I would like to do them. So I don't really know if like if there is an example to look at, basically.
Well, what is the topic of the film?
Masters of flow states.
Okay.
So that state, the state that you get into where everything connects, everything makes sense, and you become more than just your mortal being.
So, is there a ready-made audience for people who are interested in achieving flow states?
I mean, all of the people who are searching it, and it crosses all boundaries, right? Because it goes into creativity.
I didn't ask that. I asked, is there a market for people who are interested in learning more about flow states?
Yes, I would, you know, in a general state, yes, but I can't grasp it, I can't define it.
Okay, so part 2 of the question is, how do you connect with that audience of people who are interested in learning more about flow states?
Where they go to develop their flow state. So within each different channel, and technically the higher points of each different channel. So yes, it would be massive because it's across everything.
I rest
so there is a market. Perfect. Well, thank you.
We just have to go back to having it be marketable, and then I would say, you know, how if it's this marketable, let's make it this marketable, and then let's make it this marketable, and let's, right? So, but to start with the concept that there is a market, and how do we find them? That's the issue.
The two key.
Absolutely. Perfect. There's an audience for that. I know half those people.
I mean, yes, that's all of the people that I go and search for in all the activities that I do, right? It's the conversations, it's the connections.
Yes.
So yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
Cool.
Let's take Lynette's question, and then we're going to have our break and come back for 7 types of fundraising. Lynette, go ahead. All the way from New Zealand. So excited.
Oh, thank you. My question is about your program, and whether or not you have a program that relates for people who are either still at the shorts level or who actually are committed to continuing making shorts.
Yes. No, that's a great question. So I have a lot of clients who are making their first short, and then, but I think that for people who want to work in the short world, I feel as though there are just not enough of those people. You know, there's every reason to move to features because you want to be able to monetize the work, but there is perfectly every reason to work within the short world and master that world. Another thing that I don't hear enough is filmmakers who want to work in the experimental art world, and who therefore are not looking for distribution in the film side of things, but are looking for distribution in the art world. That's another whole world. So all I would say is, whichever of those, you know, we would figure that out, which is the path for you, and then how do we negotiate that path. But those are very different paths, but that's very interesting, Lynette. Yeah. Very nice, very nice. Okay, so let's have our break, and let's actually come back at, well, 2:30 Eastern time. So it's about 25 minutes. It's a little longer than we had yesterday. We'll come back at the half hour at the bottom of the hour, and we are going to look at 7 types of fundraising. And I have a very special exercise that I want you to do. So we're going to look at 7 types of fundraising, and we're going to have another writing break for about 10 minutes in the middle of that to look at some more things about limiting beliefs. So I will see you back at the half hour. Oh my gosh, it's still only going to be 11:30 a.m. in Pacific time. I made you all get up early. So get hydrated, or have something to eat, or go run around the block or something like that. And we'll see you back in 23 minutes. See you later. Okay. So in the final section today, we're going to finish at 4 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to look at fundraising, and I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of work here. So I'm going to make a presentation on the 7 types of fundraising, and I'm hoping that by this point you're like excited about fundraising. No, most people are not. Okay, so you know, one of the things I find is that a lot of what I teach is things that people don't want to talk about, a lot of resistance, a lot of money shit that comes up, and so what I teach is always hard stuff. You have to be courageous to do it. So thank you for being courageous. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the 7 types of fundraising. And I want you just to help me out a little bit by, as I go through each one, write down the number and the name of the type of fundraising, so that as I go through, you're going to end up with a list of like 7 words, just that's going to clarify for you each type of fundraising. And then we're going to do some writing about it in a while. Oh, you're going to do that, Lexi? Awesome. All right, so I am going to find my... Ooh, I was all prepared today with it, and now I don't know where it is. I'm going to find my document. 7 types of fundraising. I don't need this to do it, but it's helpful. Okay, I'm going to have to find it again. Here it is. All right. I'm going to share my screen, and we are off, and we are going to go through the 7 types of fundraising. All right. So you have your work cut out for you, all right? You're going to write down the name. How do I get it to take up the whole screen? Oh, here we go. All right. Okay, so these are the way that I divide up the different types of fundraising, and I figured that every filmmaker is different, every film is different. So for example, Olivier just gave this really great example of a film about looking for flow states, and the way that we might fundraise for his film is going to be completely different from the way we're going to fundraise for Denise's film, which is her first film. Okay, so Olivier has a production company, so he's been around. Olivier was actually at my very first class that I taught in 2016, and then we did this fabulous pitch event together. So it's great to see Olivier. So the 7 types of fundraising, and as I'm going through this, ask the question, you know, which one or more than one works best for me and for my film, you know, because we're all different. So the first type of fundraising is individual donors. And one of the things that's so important to remember about this is that the majority of money that is given every year is given by individual donors. The majority. And I don't even mean like, oh, you know, 51% of money is given by individual donors. It's in the 90% of any money that is given away every year is given away by individual donors. And those individual donors, the majority of that money goes to churches, temples, and synagogues. So earlier we were talking about faith-based films. So anybody out there who is interested in faith-based films, I want you to know, more than 90% of all money donated in a year is donated by individuals, and of that, the majority is donated to churches, temples, and synagogues. So that might be an interesting place that you might want to think about raising your money. So individual donors are motivated by the desire to give and to make a change in the world, and they give to the causes that are most important to them. So let's say I'm the donor. You know, am I going to give to Olivier's film on flow states? How would we know? How would we know? I did give a little clue before when he was talking about it, but every donor is different. So I always say, as a donor, I have never crossed over to the other side, and that's my own kind of fundraising joke. But there are many, many people, and there are millions and millions of dollars that are given to animals. That's not my thing. That is not what excites me, and obviously it excites a lot of people. But for me, the things that are important in the world are people, and people who are having difficulty, you know, so that's kind of my thing as a donor. But there are lots of people, say, who give to animals. So let's say you're making a film about, oh, I have a friend who, she was making a film about a man who basically devoted his life to saving mustangs. And he built a whole farm around mustangs and so on. So if you're making a film about saving mustangs, you probably are not going to come to me as your donor, but you're going to come to the person next to me who loves animals, more specifically who loves horses, more specifically who loves mustangs, right? So individual donors, every donor is individual. I just can't stress that enough. I learned this lesson the first time I ever tried to raise money, and I was running a cinema. I was running an art house cinema. We were a first run cinema, and I was running a film school. I raised $500,000 a year to run all of that. But before I was the boss, I started fundraising, and I was running the film school, and we had this Rolodex of all of our members, and the members of the cinema paid $40 a year, and the members of the film school paid $60 a year, and they had access to equipment and all kinds of things. So I'm going through this Rolodex, and I found this guy, and I was like, he's not a filmmaker. Why is he in this list? So I called him up and asked him for a gift. And I said, why did you join the co-op? You know, you don't make films. And he said, well, I wanted to give as much money as I could to the organization, and $60 was the highest amount you asked for. That's a big lesson in fundraising. If you didn't get it, that is a big lesson in fundraising. He ended up giving us $35,000. But he taught me one of the biggest lessons. You only get what you ask for. That's a huge lesson in fundraising. You only get what you ask for. So he gave $60. So but he actually loved the cinema, and that's why he was there, but we didn't ask for any more money until that time. Another guy I found in the $60 list that was not a filmmaker, and he supported a lot of arts organizations in town. This was in Miami Beach. And he gave us $10,000, and for his $10,000 gift, he wanted to come over. He ordered pizza for all the staff. He wanted to come and have lunch with the staff. The first guy, he wanted to see the budget. He wanted to see the budget for last year. Then he wanted to see the budget for next year. Then he wanted to see the budget for the cinema. Then he wanted to see the budget for the Alliance. Then he wanted to see and it went on and on and on. Budget. I never met him face to face. Never met him. He wanted to see that my budgets were accurate and in place and made sense and all of that. He gave us $35,000. The other guy wanted to know we were nice people. He did not want to be giving to any organization. He didn't care what the organization was if they were not nice. He was actually a huge ballet fan, and he went over to the Miami City Ballet, and the receptionist was rude to him, and he never would give them money. He just said, I'm not giving to organizations where people are not nice. So the big lesson I learned from those two were that every donor is different. Every donor is looking for something completely different. And my job is to, within the guidelines of what I'm doing in my organization, my job is to provide that. So in the job of, in the first case, my job was to provide the budgets. And in the second case, my job was to provide the pleasant staff for lunch. Okay, so I divide individual donors into two types. So the first type is small donors. And in the past, we used to do raffles and bake sales, and there's no reason that you can't do raffles and bake sales, but in the past we were limited to those kind of things. What on earth did I just do? Hold on, let me find my thing again here. But now we can do crowdfunding. So crowdfunding was started by the woman who founded Indiegogo, which is the largest crowdfunding site. She started it because she was trying to raise money for a group of musicians, like a quartet or something like that, classical quartet, I think it was. And back then, back in the 80s, technically, you couldn't raise money unless you had a nonprofit. I don't know if you're aware of this, but you couldn't raise money legally from people unless you were a nonprofit. And so this lady who started Indiegogo created a huge disruption in the system. She created Indiegogo, where individuals raise money. So I, as Joanne, I can put a project on Indiegogo, I can put my film on Indiegogo, and I can raise money, and that money comes to me. Back then, the law didn't actually allow that. The law has actually had to change to catch up with it. So the law now makes it that's legal, but back then it wasn't. So these days, the most effective way to reach small donors is crowdfunding. And what do I mean by small donors? Well, crowdfunding, the average number that people give for crowdfunding is $75. So when you run a crowdfunding campaign, and the reason I have my clients do $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 is that it takes 100 donors to raise $10,000, and it's ridiculously accurate. So you need to convert 100 people to actually giving to your campaign to make $10,000. So, and the templates for the different crowdfunding sites are very nicely done. So you end up with a very nice looking campaign that you really don't have to, you don't have to spend any money to make it. You don't have to, build a new website. You just have a template that you go through, and they're very nice. So that really is the best way to reach your small donors. The second type of individuals is major donors. And so you need to figure out what is a major donor for you? Maybe you're making your first small film, and maybe a major donor is $500. Maybe that's a major donor for you. I have a client for whom a major donor is $25,000. So it just depends on how much you're raising, what your network is like, what they have given in the past, because when you start fundraising, one of the things that's really great is that you build your donors over time. So for my clients who are on their second, third, eighth film, then they already have a database of people. I have one client who has a database of 2,500 people, ranging from donors who've paid $25 for a ticket for something, all the way up to, what did he say yesterday? $10,000, I think it was. No, more than that. But anyway, a range of people, and over the years, he stewards those relationships to build those relationships. And major donors have to be treated differently than small donors. So small donors with a crowdfunding campaign, that's fine. But with major donors, in traditional fundraising, those are the people that you sit down and have coffee with. You take them out for lunch. You take them out for dinner. They require more time. The money is higher, but they require more time. And for some people, their major donors are going to be people like their parents or their aunt or their uncle or their cousin. Major donors are people who believe in you, and they believe that you can deliver the project. So major donors is very much about relationship building, and filmmakers have to be good at relationship building, or they couldn't make films. Films are not, and usually not, something that you do by yourself. So you have to become very good at relationship building. If you want to work in the industry, you have to become excellent at relationship building. And so this is where there's a big overlap between the skills that filmmakers have and the skills that they need to have in fundraising. So, and I have several clients who start out with a crowdfunding campaign. They think, oh, I don't know, I don't have people in my network with money. And they run a crowdfunding campaign, and then we're able to convert some of those people into major donors. It's happened many, many, many times. I mentioned yesterday my client who made a film about her own experience getting a cancer diagnosis, and she did a crowdfunding campaign and got a $5,000 gift from an oncologist. I have a client who made a film that started out as a very personal film between her and her very young daughter, and ended up going off into civil rights issues. And lo and behold, she got a major donor who is a civil rights lawyer, who put in, I think it was $15,000 into her crowdfunding campaign, and became like an executive producer on her film. So, but major donors are very much about relationships. You don't get a major donor by sending out an email or text or something like that. Okay, so foundations. My mentor in fundraising is called Murray Warshawski. And Murray Warshawski, I used to have him come to the Alliance Cinema, the independent co-op that I used to run, and IFP Miami. He used to come and teach. And one year he came and he said, my favorite way to raise money is foundations. My favorite way to raise money for films is foundations. And the next time I brought him back, he said, my favorite way to raise money is individual donors. So it depended on the year, how successful his clients were. But foundations are entities that are set up to provide community benefit, and they're usually set up by people of wealth who want to formalize their giving. And what do I mean by that? So, okay, I have a friend who many years ago, he and his husband was like a billionaire, I guess, from very, very old oil money in Texas, and they gave $25,000 a year away. But my friend felt that wasn't really in keeping with their level of wealth, and he wanted to learn about fundraising. So I became his teacher to learn about fundraising. And over the next couple of years, and he was not the one with the money, but the partner who was the one with the money eventually became the head of the capital campaign for Project Open Hand, which is an organization in San Francisco that feeds, provides meals for people with HIV and AIDS. And he ended up becoming their capital campaign manager, director of their capital campaign, and raising millions of dollars, and giving much more significantly. But really that happened because his husband had this vision that he saw that they should be giving a lot more money, and he needed to learn more about the world of nonprofits and the world of giving and so on. And so through my cultivation and stewardship of him, he was able to pass that information on to his partner. Now, a foundation is something that maybe the partner would start. Maybe he would say, I want to set up a formal entity that's going to give my money away. And depending on the amount of money that's given, the foundation might be, I remember one time I was the director of development for the YMCA in the Tenderloin, the Shoeline Central YMCA. And I raised money mostly for the youth department. And I saw that a local organization got some money from the David B. Gold Foundation. Who's the David B. Gold Foundation, I thought. So I Googled, I couldn't find a website. I couldn't find anything out about them except they were listed at this neighboring organization that they had given them money. So there are ways you can do it. I'm not going to get into it. But anyway, I found out the address of the David B. Gold Foundation. I wrote them a proposal, sent it off. I never think about it. After I've sent off my proposal, it's gone. And I forgot all about it. And other foundations were sending money, and, I dramatically beat my fundraising goal, which I always do. And then one day I get a check. I got an envelope, and it says on the outside, David B. Gold Foundation. And when I opened the envelope, there was a check in there for $5,000 with no note, no nothing. I had never received an acknowledgement that I had written a proposal to them. I never heard anything from them. And a couple of years later, I met the wife, the widow of David B. Gold, who was running the foundation. She came to a meeting at another capital campaign that I was running. And it was her. It was just her, by herself. And she was giving away the family money. And she didn't have any staff, and she didn't have anybody helping her, and she didn't know computers, and so she just wrote checks by hand and put them in envelopes and wrote the address on the front and sent them out. So that's the smallest type of foundation there might be. And then you go all the way to the majors, like the top 10 foundations include the Ford Foundation. So their money originally came from Ford Motor Company. Or the Kresge Foundation. Most people here are not old enough to know about Kresge's Five and Dime. So Kresge's Five and Dime stores were all over the country in the 30s and 40s. So that money went over to the Kresge Foundation. They're my favorite foundation of all, the Kresge Foundation. And these organizations give away millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. So there's everything from Mrs. Gold writing her $5,000 checks all the way up to multi-million-dollar gifts. The Knight Foundation is very significant for artists. The John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, very interested in democracy. They're interested in preserving democracy, and they see film and media production and journalism as a form of preserving democracy. So they're a good place to go for filmmakers. The Ford Foundation has their filmmaking arm, Just Film. And these organizations these foundations give to what they call a portfolio of causes. So let's say the David B. Gold Foundation, they were interested in youth education, maybe youth education for underserved populations, because they gave money to two organizations in the Tenderloin, which is the poorest neighborhood in San Francisco. So the David B. Gold Foundation, their portfolio includes youth education for underserved youth. The Ford Foundation probably has 100 different areas that they fund. So depending on what the topic of your film is, then maybe it fits the criteria of these foundations. So if you're making documentary films, you have to learn how to fundraise in foundations. If you're making fiction films, it's less likely that you will go to foundations, but it depends on the topic of your film, because there are fiction films that are very much rooted in in all kinds of causes, social justice causes, environmental justice, or the environment in general, or there are all kinds of themes and topics that could be being addressed in your film that could work with a foundation. So I said in here, the foundations provide community benefits such as supporting education, feeding the poor, helping the environment, feeding animals, preserving democracy. So they have all kinds of thousands and thousands and thousands of causes that they support. Not every foundation supports every cause. They pick, as I said, a portfolio of causes, and then it's our job as fundraisers to learn which foundations and develop relationships with them. When I first moved to San Francisco and I was working for the YMCA, I love networking. So I loved talking to all the people at the foundations. But there was one foundation that gave us money every year, and they had one staff person, and she was so mean. And my boss had to help me get over the hump of knowing that I had to call this woman once a year. And she would always be rude and she would always be mean, but it's very unusual, very, very unusual. Most people at foundations are extremely nice people. And I didn't actually work for a foundation, but I did work on the other side of the desk. So I started out as a funder. Before I became a fundraiser, I started out as a funder. I was on the opposite side of the desk. And, I think that a lot of people don't realize that staff who are there to help you, get your proposal in and so on, staff want to see the best projects getting funded the same way as the funders do. So I was very, very impressed with one of my clients the other day. He applied to, well, we'll get there to grants, but he applied to a grant the other day. And before he got his grant in, he had gotten to the head of the program and started to have conversations with him. So it's incumbent upon us as fundraisers to develop these relationships and really get to work with people and let them know who we are and let them help us improve their grants. I had a client one time, and she had applied to the same government entity 6 times before she worked with me. 6 times, a massive piece of work. And I gave her this one suggestion, which was develop a relationship with one of the officers there. And that year she got $350,000 for her project. So, because that officer helped her hone her proposal, whereas for the 6 years before she was doing it all by herself. So, a lot of foundations say that they don't fund media, and they don't, and mostly it's because they just don't really understand media. They don't understand why one person is applying for a $50,000 film and another one is applying for a $5 million film, and they don't understand the difference. So they don't understand the budgets for films. But that doesn't mean to say that you can't apply to them for things like education. So let's say that film I was talking about with the cancer diagnosis, that film could be used maybe in women's organizations as a conversation piece to develop and could be developed into an education program, and nearly every foundation would support that. If they support something like cancer or advocacy or education, then they would support that. So they wouldn't necessarily support the making of the film, but they would support an education program or distribution program for the film, and that's very common. But this is a great source of funding. So number 4, corporate sponsorship. These notes here I think might be going into the weeds a little too much. What I really mean by corporate sponsorship is when you go to a company and you get money from their marketing department. So corporations have a marketing budget that they spend every year, and they're using those marketing dollars to get the word out about their brand. And so what they're interested in is how many eyeballs are going to see my brand for these dollars. So if I'm going to spend $100, how many eyeballs do I get for every $100 I spend? Well, what if you can go to them and show them that your film is going to get millions of eyeballs, or hundreds of thousands of eyeballs? You may be able to offer them a better bang for their buck than if they go and put an ad on TV. Oh, by the way, while we were having our little break, I put the TV on and I heard a line in a commercial, and it said, "I'm just a struggling actor, so I don't have any money." It's like, oh my God. How many times is that playing? That message from society that, anyway. Now you can look out for them. Now you can look out for these messages from society and say, that's not me. So yeah, corporations are, they tend to support projects with big audiences. And sometimes when you're earlier in your filmmaking career, that's not really a place that you can look for money. But when you really have a track record of being able to bring eyeballs to your film, then corporate sponsorship is a great way to go. If you're working with showing your film on public television, this is definitely a way to go, because there are millions of viewers on public television. So corporate sponsorship is very significant if you're working in the public television field. I have a client who, the first time I met him, we were talking on the phone, and he was telling me that he had a film coming out on public television like 3 months from the day that we were talking. And I said, oh, that's fantastic. Do you have any corporate sponsors? And he was like, what's that? So I explained to him what a corporate sponsorship was. He literally hung up the phone and made a $25,000 phone call. And he got a $25,000 sponsor to come on his film. And that was for showing it in New Mexico, and now he's starting again because he just got national distribution, so he can get bigger sponsors for national distribution. All right, special events. Oh my God, I hate special events so much. I had a job for a couple of years where we did about 70, 80 events a year, and I burned out. I really burned out on special events. But you see this commonly with nonprofits. They'll have galas, they'll have a 5K race, they'll have a street fair, they'll have, all these big labor intensive events. They're great for corporate sponsors, but they're terrible for expense. They cost a lot of money. And I see a lot of nonprofits out there doing these big events and spending a lot of money and not raising any money, and there's just no point. So again, my mentor, Mari Warshawski, he has a book out called House Parties. I'm not going to go into house parties today, or maybe I have time. But house parties is a great way of using a special event to bring together a group of major donors to give to your project. And it can be a documentary, it can be a fiction film, it doesn't really matter. But there's a whole methodology that he lays out in this book. Both his books are great. The first one is called Shaking the Money Tree, and it's really the Bible for fundraising for documentary filmmakers. And the second one is called House Parties. I had a client who was, her day job was real estate. She sold real estate, and she had a lot of kind of wealthy connections. And she decided, oh, that's what I'm doing. I'm doing house parties. I'm going to do, about 5 around the country and raise money that way. Okay, grants. So I make the distinction of, I think of grants as being government money. The first grant I ever got was a filmmaking fellowship from the state of Florida for $5,000 for my work. A fellowship is money for you as an artist. It is not based on making a film or getting a project. So every filmmaker here who happens to be based in Florida, the state of Florida is still giving out artist fellowships, and you submit a proposal and you submit your body of work, and they give out a lot of those fellowships. And $5,000, awesome. So check and see if your state gives that money, if your county gives that money, and if your city gives that money. So for example, I was living in San Francisco. San Francisco gives $10,000 artist grants every year. Now that's not a fellowship, it's project-based, but it's available to every filmmaker. Well, it's for all arts, but so San Francisco gives multiple $10,000 grants out every year. So look locally at your city and see what's available. Look and see your county, region, state, what's available. and then look at the state and see what's available. Now, for my international filmmakers here, we have Peter from South Africa. We have Dr. Alberta from Trinidad and Tobago. We have a couple of other people from India. So all my American filmmakers, you have to shut your ears right now. America is the only country in the world that does not provide film grants. Every other country in the world provides film grants. Up until about 5 or 6 years ago, it was us and India. But then India realized, oh, we need to support our filmmakers too. But they kind of had the same idea. It's like, well, there's Hollywood and there's Bollywood. What do we need to give out grants for? That's kind of the thinking. But every other country in the world gives out grants for filmmakers. And then some countries are far more generous than others. So Canada is, if you're Canadian, there is money available for you. If you are South African, there is money available for you. So all my international people on the call, there is government money available in the form of grants. Also, if I don't think I had anybody here from Europe. It's interesting. I didn't have anybody from Europe. But anyway, there are also, at a larger level than a country, there are also levels like European funding. There's, in sort of regions. So all that comes under government funding. And for that international money, usually what that's for is the country is funding films because it's a form of marketing for the country, like tourism marketing, right? So that's why America is not interested in it. It's like, we have Hollywood, 80% of the content watched around the world is American. I think that's a frightening prospect, but that's my opinion. So America doesn't see why it needs to market itself. Hollywood's already marketing itself, right? So the countries that give money for film, they are seeing that money as marketing money for the country. And I remember I was at the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival one time, and they picked me up from the airport, and I was sharing a car with a Cuban filmmaker, and he had been traveling with his film from international festival to international festival around the world. It was a very good film, actually, and he had spent a year on the road going from festival to festival to festival to festival with his film. And Cuba has some very special reasons for wanting to spend money on marketing itself. There are certain countries that, they have some cleanup to do around their image. So they spend money in that way. And they see that film going from country to country to country as being money well spent. And there are some countries that are really catching up. The Dominican Republic is doing massive amounts of investment into its filmmakers. Jamaica is doing a lot of investment into its filmmakers. So if you're not in America, that's an important place. The seventh type of fundraising, this is what I was saying yesterday, I nearly became a specialist in planned giving. So planned giving is not really something that's available if you are an individual. Planned giving is when somebody leaves money in their estate and they plan on leaving that money. I have an estate plan that's where my money is going to certain different charities. So, but if any of you out there have nonprofits, then planned giving is something that's available to you. And some of my clients have nonprofits as well as their individual filmmaking. So, but this is kind of an interesting kind of specialty in fundraising. and there's all kinds of ins and outs about it, but usually for individuals it's not right. So okay, have you all now got a piece of paper or something with the 7 types written, 1 through 7? Has everybody got that? I just want to write that down. Thank you, whoever that was who said yes. So what I'm going to do, let me just take a few moments and see what if anybody would like to share anything about what you just heard. I know that's a bit of a general question, but would anybody like to share something about what they just heard? Did you learn anything new?
You want to hear about past experiences?
Who is that speaking?
Marjorie.
Were they good?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Yes.
Okay, well, I applied for a grant, and the lesson about it is you ask for what you get, and I didn't know that you could ask for more. But I got what I asked for. I got the 5,000. I should have asked for more.
Fantastic, Marjorie.
And then somebody called me.
What was
somebody
it?
called me.
What was it for? What was
Motorola.
it for?
Motorola.
Motorola. Oh, okay. And it was
a technology grant.
Oh.
And then someone called me. He took me out for dinner. I couldn't give him the information he wanted, but I went home and emailed him the information who he could contact, and he went and donated $1,000 to my children's book through my fiscal sponsor.
So you got a major donor and you got a grant.
Yes.
Fantastic.
And then I've had friends donate money to either the short film or the children's book through my fiscal sponsor.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well,
because the problem with Kickstarter is that it never worked for me. I don't have the book to do it, but I'm really good at like networking and talking and sending the email with my like even my signature has my fundraising pages at the bottom of it. And then there's some community service stuff that I do, and sometimes people just donate to it.
Great.
So friends, family, production people, just people have donated over time.
Nice.
Ongoing. So it's a little slow process, but it has been ongoing. You never know when someone's going to donate money.
That's right. But you have to have it set up, right? So that they can
Right. I'm set up for it. So mostly my best advice is find a really good fiscal sponsor and set your budget to include the money for the fiscal sponsor.
Okay.
So you don't have to go back and re-raise that money.
Who else would like to share something about what they just heard or learned?
I don't know if it's okay.
I have a question.
Okay, I'm not seeing everybody. Let's go with Denise first and then you, Mahendra. Denise, go ahead.
Thank you. I was just gonna ask, how would we properly manage small amounts of money? Should we just save it until it's a big amount?
Small amounts, such how do you mean?
Like, for example, if it was a $5,000 grant, but you need more or something like that, is it smarter to just save it until it's the big amount?
Well, if let's say your project is going to cost you $10,000, then you're going to have to get to the 10,000 before you spend the money. If
you want to, I can answer that question. I've been fiscally responsible and I put it into business savings account.
Marjorie, hold on. So Denise, depending on what your project is, you might want to spend that, you might need to spend that money at the time and keep raising the money, or you could save it. There's no one answer to your question. That really would depend on the project and how you were managing it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mahendra, go ahead. All the way from Gujarat, right?
Yes, Gujarat, India. Now, the first thing you said is like the easiest way to raise money would be for faith-based project.
I didn't exactly say that, so let me just clarify. Thanks for asking that question. What I said was the majority by so far of money that is given away every year, well over 90% of money that is given away every year is given by individuals. I think that, I mean, I just cannot stress this enough. If I could write it in capital letters on my forehead, it would be more than 90% of the money that is given away every year is given by individuals. Okay? The majority of the money given away by individuals is given to churches, temples, and synagogues. In other words, the majority of money that people give away is given to their faith home, their spiritual home, right? So I was just making then a connection, and I was saying that there were some people here who said they wanted to make faith-based films, and I said, notice about the money. That's all I said. So I didn't say the easiest way to raise money is to get individuals to give you money for faith-based films. I didn't say that. But I did say, just notice.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious. I'm just curious because see, you might have heard of the film Passion of the Christ, which Mel Gibson directed. So was that funded that way, or it was funded by studios?
It would have been funded based on Mel Gibson's name and dollar value as an actor. Or director.
Oh yeah, thank you.
The director, yeah.
Yeah, he directed also, I
very
think.
Big budget film.
It was a very big budget.
Yeah. The other secret sauce that the Passion of Christ had was no, wait. Oh my God, I can't remember his name properly. Anyway, the guy who was in charge of distributing that film is a genius, a distribution genius. I will try and remember his name before 4 o'clock. So, oh my God, Bernie. Yeah, I got to meet him once. Absolute genius. All right. Any other questions? All right. So, we're going to do our final 10-minute writing session. And what I want you to do is take your list of 7, already 6, because that 7th one is only going to apply to a very few people. Take your list of 6 different fundraising types. And I would like we're going to take 10 very quiet minutes. And I want you to write down, what are the limiting beliefs that come up for you as you consider each type of fundraising? Okay, so did you get that? What are the limiting beliefs that come up for you about each type of fundraising? And if you could find one maybe for each type, you'll have 6 different limiting beliefs. Okay, so Josh, are you asking a question? No. Okay, you're just waving. So let's see if I'm just going to repeat it again. You have your list of your 7 types of fundraising. I would like you to meditate on what is a limiting belief that comes up when you think about actually trying that kind of fundraising. Okay, so I'm gonna set the timer for 10 minutes. This is going to be our last writing session. 10 minutes, and start now. I am very, very curious about what you came up with here about limiting beliefs. So before, what we were doing, we were just looking at our very kind of personal, internal limiting beliefs about money. This now we're going to specifically think about going out there and raising money for our films. And so Let's see if anybody would like to share what they came up with in their writing. I'm going to wait on you, Denise. We've heard from you. I just want to see if anybody else wants to speak up who we haven't heard from.
I'll speak up.
We'll come to you, Denise.
Can you hear me?
Who has something that they would like to share? Neela, we haven't heard from you.
Hello?
You're muted.
Yeah, so
go ahead. What did you discover? What did you uncover?
I just think it's a great because we live around.
I'm sorry. I have to do something here. Sorry.
I found it very interesting that there are so many sources of funds available, and it was like very limiting for me that because I'm such a new and the idea is there, but I think it gave me more confirmation because I had this idea of using the existing Silicon Valley properties with churches to document them with documentation, like, as a space. And I just think that it's like suddenly you opened up that, hey, there is possibility. It's not just an idea. So I'm very excited, and I do want to little bit know, more about like your because we discussed about what you how you work with us, but I don't know the rates and everything. So maybe, discuss about it. Yeah.
You mean about working with me?
Yes.
Fill out the questionnaire. I'll just put it in the chat here.
Okay.
Fill out the questionnaire and we'll set up a time to talk.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody's telling me is it Talaya? T. Grimes wants to speak. Talaya.
Hi. So I actually I come from philanthropy, actually. Philanthropy, and I've also been a grant maker. So I've done all these things ad nauseum, and I continue to do them for documentary. So I feel very comfortable with documentary, asking people for money, probably because I come from the nonprofit background before I got into film. I worked in international relations, NGOs. So I'll ask people for a cause all day. That's not a problem. I'm having my limiting belief, I realize, doing this exercise is I have a belief I can't do it for fiction films, which is now particularly fiction films that are features. And particularly first time, I do a lot of producing. So I've helped people do, in the last couple of years, like 4 different shorts. And so now they're ready to do their first features. And so the limiting beliefs I definitely have that I'm realizing now is that I don't believe I could do the same thing I've done for documentaries that I could do for fiction films.
Wow, that is a fantastic one to uncover, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is fantastic because it's hard to achieve something. Where did we start this last 2 days? Yesterday we started with, first of all, we have to have the vision, right? So we have to have the vision. So first of all, we have to have the vision that you can make money, you can raise money and make features. That's kind of the first step, right? To just be able to envision that and say, but wait, there are these different ways of raising money, and so excellent. I love that one. Gregory, unmute.
Yeah, okay, I am. The limiting belief is like not believing in yourself. Like if you've ever been made fun of and people think you're a failure, and nobody takes you seriously, and you begin to, that comes into you and your wherever you want to do. It seems like, oh, this project is not good enough. Why don't you just forget it and stuff like that.
That was a whole string of limiting beliefs, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And it sounded to me, Gregory, as though you might still think those things are true.
Well, it's hard to knock them down because if you've been told that for a long time, laughed at, and going to school, I was bullied. So,
Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure there are other people here who had that experience, right?
yeah, it takes your confidence down too.
Yes, but I think the first step for you, Gregory, is you may not believe this right now, but I just want to tell you those beliefs are not the truth. That's the first thing for you. Those beliefs are not the truth, but right now you think they are. So what I do when I have a belief that I think is true and I can't deal with it by myself, I go to other people like teachers and different things to put more positive things in my brain. And so I go on YouTube and find somebody you like. Maybe you like Tony Robbins. I mentioned Tony Robbins yesterday. Maybe you like Esther Hicks and Abraham. Sometimes I like, what's his name? The hip hop preacher. He's like really in your face, and he's like, get up, and he coaches basketball. Sometimes I'm like, Eric Thomas, the hip hop preacher. Sometimes I'm all about Eric Thomas, So sometimes, if I'm not I've had a lot of health issues. Sometimes I don't feel well, and I don't have it in me to, move out of the negative thinking. So I just go tap into somebody else who's more positive,
Okay.
On YouTube and run all day. Let's go back to Denise, and then we'll go Ryan and then Claudia. Denise, where are you? I can't see you anymore.
Oh, I'll put my camera on.
Hi.
I didn't do my hair.
Where are you calling from, Denise?
I'm in the Central Valley in Modesto.
Oh, okay. Yes. All right.
Yeah. So a lot of my limiting beliefs are definitely in the small donors. Some of them are that donors don't care about my cause, that they can't afford my cause, that they're too poor, that I'll feel bad for asking, that I might have constant rejection, that I'll be susceptible to getting my heart broken because I keep getting no's. Those are the main ones.
Because I keep getting no's. Did you say? What was that last one you read? What was the last one?
So that I might get my heart broken every time I get a no.
Aha. Now, do you remember what Dr. Alberta said earlier? She was afraid of rejection. She was afraid of no's. But then when I asked her if she'd ever been told no, she was like, no, I haven't. Everybody says yes.
Thank you.
Everybody says yes. So, what is that about, But she's still afraid that people are going to reject her, even though they never have.
That's true.
So she's already further down the road than you are, but she's still seeing that she has that same limiting belief that you have, But all I can say is that will not turn out to be the case.
Thank you so much.
Lovely. Ryan, what did you find?
I found that, I guess, in the major donor category that, people don't know that much about the film industry, and maybe I haven't explained it well enough that my film would be, would give ROI, because that's what they would want, right? Like they want return on their investment. And my limiting belief is that I can't return their investment.
I actually,
and also that I don't have enough credits for them to give me the money that I need to make the film, I haven't directed enough things yet to do this.
Okay, so those were two very good ones. The first one, I do want to say, I didn't bring up investors in my list of fundraising. But there's a whole other set of things. There's investors, there's sales, distribution, all of that stuff. So one thing that is very important is to separate out major donors and investors and just be very clear about that. So a donor is somebody who gives who doesn't expect anything in return. And an investor is somebody who puts money into a project expecting a return on their investment. So I just want to get that really clear, because we want to make a hard line here between the two. So if somebody wants to give, then they're a donor. If somebody wants a return, then they're an investor. And they need to be approached very, very, very differently. Very differently. So with a donor, they want to give to a cause. With an investor, they want to give to a business opportunity that's going to bring them money back. So where you are at, Ryan, in our work together is you are exactly getting to the point where you're going to be able to offer a business opportunity with a return on investment and be able to speak confidently about that. That's exactly what we're working on. Yeah. So when it comes to donors, I don't quite think that's the arena you're in, but it's fine also to get donations if people are like, no, I just want to help you. That's fine, you know. The second one about the I don't have enough credits is interesting. I have a client who was making a feature, and then all of a sudden she's decided to make a short, and she said very genuinely, and it was too late, the crowdfunding campaign was going and all kinds of things, and she's very excited about it, and she's doing very well with it. So I didn't want to say, you know, I don't buy this idea that you don't have enough credits. You know, she has been editing for years, she has produced other people's projects. It's time for her to be directing a feature. But she allowed people to tell her she didn't have enough directing credits to direct a feature. But, you know, she already has the experience, so, you know. But
yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat. I think that I have enough experience.
You have a ton of experience. You have a ton of experience, so just ignore them. And let me tell you, if you were a man, they wouldn't say it.
Yeah.
Hello. All right. Claudia, what's your question?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. So I think for me, I recently had a crowdfunding campaign, actually about a year ago. I was inspired by another crowd fundraising, the BGDM crowd fundraising that they had in 2020. And so it inspired me to do mine. And I set my goal, what now I realize was beyond this, not an average workable goal that I was trying to raise. Anyway, I was trying to raise about 150,000, and I raised $7,000. And so it was very, I have to say, I didn't feel like I just went into it balls out, but I really didn't feel prepared. But the ball had already been rolling, so I just ran with it. It's a great learning experience, but I feel like I've learned now that you really do have to be prepared to do like a crowd raising campaigns to maximize and to try to really reach your goal. The other thing that I'm right now in the process, I know I have to, I don't really even have a choice. I have to reach out to major donors in the next couple of months. And this is really challenging for me and limiting because they're deep down, you know, I have like key people I want to reach out to, but when I have just feel weird asking for money. It's just something that I just,
Claudia,
even though I deserve it.
Claudia, can you tell me the topic of your film?
It's several topics. It's on identity, healing, and women of color artists. So it's all of that because it's using art as a tool of resistance, but it's also encompassing identity. And it's about basically the history of these group of women that have done in the last 25 years. And this year is the 25th anniversary, which is why it's like I'm kind of under the gun because I have to do all this shooting and I only have like 5 grand. So, in any case, so the thing
Okay,
about
Claudia, this is the little shift I'm gonna help you with here.
Okay. Yeah.
So, how much money are you trying to raise?
I think right now, if I could get 30,000, that would at least get me through so that I can be able to get funding from grants.
Okay, so 30,000. So, is that if I could give you $30,000 today, is that money for you?
No, none of that would be for me. It would be to hire an editor because I've been editing myself and I don't want to edit anymore. To hire a producer and to hire a DP.
So,
and that would be just to get
if you think about the fact that you are raising the money for, let's call it, the community of artists of color who use their art as healing, does that help you shift your attention away from yourself, thinking that you're asking for money for yourself, to that you're asking for money for a cause and a community? Because I think that what a lot of people get hung up on is, I'm asking for money for me. It's like, hello, you're not asking for money for you. That's not money for you.
Yes.
That's money for a cause which you are putting in your time and effort and sweat equity and all of that to bring out to the world, and you need that money to bring that cause out to the world. That is not money for Claudia to go out for lunch and get her hair done.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's a very simple shift to make, to stop thinking about, I'm asking, let's say I'm the donor, I'm asking Joanne for money for me. No, I'm asking Joanne to donate to this amazing cause that I'm working so hard for. Right?
Right.
So,
and if I could say this too, in establishing these relationships with these people, there is a little part of me that feels like kind of that the relationship is based, because it's based on money, that it's not gonna be as genuine, or it's gonna be a little like,
that
really,
is
if it wasn't for the money, would I still be in a relationship?
That is a very specific limiting belief that artists like to have. And it's about something to do with, money is the root of all evil or something like that. No, money is going to get your film made and get your word out about what it is that you're trying to educate and entertain us all about. But it's got nothing to do with genuine or not genuine. One of the things I always like to remind people is, when somebody gives you money for your film, that may be the only way that they are ever going to get to make a film. Not everybody is going to get up at 4 a.m. and go out and shoot before the sun rises and get their crew on the road and, do all of the hard work of lifting gear around and everything and dealing with people and all of that stuff and getting a film made. Most people are never going to do that. The only way that they can participate is by giving you money. The only way that they can get to take part in your film, in getting that cause out to the world, is by giving you money. Why would you take that opportunity away from them? So you're going to build a community of people around you, and just the same way as you think about, I got to get a DP, I got to get a sound person, I got to get the lights, I got to get the post-production right, I've also got to build my community of the people who are going to put the money into making the film. And that's the way that they're going to get to participate. So as we're drawing to a close, I think there were a couple more people who wanted to ask a question. Josh, did you have a question? Yes. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, my friend, who's like a business partner kind of with filmmaking, he wanted to talk, he wanted to bring up the idea of like LLCs, and I just thought it applied to this subject because talk about investors and make fundraising. So I was just wondering, does starting an LLC make it more likely that an investor would donate to your project?
Well, if you are making a feature film, you have to set up an LLC. And if you're going to be taking investors, yes, you have to have an LLC. It's not that big a
Oh,
deal, but yeah,
okay.
it's going to be a requirement. Alberta, quick one.
Eh,
I think you know.
my own would be like how you could be asking for money for in times like these, your cause not urgent, it have more life and death situation, that type of thing.
Yes, that limiting belief, I think, is a very easy hole to fall into, you know? And what's interesting is when you work in the nonprofit world, every single nonprofit that you speak to has a version of that. Oh, nobody wants to give to homeless people when they can be giving to children. Oh, nobody wants to give to children when they could be giving to build a university. Oh, nobody wants to give to universities when they can, right? It just goes on and on and on and on. There's always something. One of my favorite things I ever heard was from Les Brown, and he said, people spend their money on things that they want, not on things that they need. And I think you can use that. For you, you're making a very specific documentary about a very specific, very popular topic in Trinidad and Tobago, and people will want to give money to that. And not everybody. The person who wants to give all their money to animals is not going to be your person. But the people who are interested in this topic are going to support the topic. So I'm going to just close up now. And I just want to thank everybody for being so great and participating and playing along with all my stuff about money and fundraising. And, I feel as though I have just acquired a whole bunch more people in my life who are willing to talk about money. I do it all day. I talk about filmmaking and money all day. And sometimes it's not easy. I think I said, I've realized there are two types of people in the world. When they start fundraising, there are the people who attack, and there are the people who hide under the covers. So what I want is people who are willing to go through a little bit of fire, because it is a bit of fire that you have to go through to actually raise money and actually get your films made. So if you would like to try to raise $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 on your own, here is a class for you. You could buy it today, you can have it done by Sunday, and you can have your crowdfunding campaign launched in a couple of weeks. Okay? And I'd say 10, 11,000, 12,000. I suspect Claudia could raise her $30,000 with that. She's already on her way. But for most who are doing it for the first time, 10, 11, 12, I would say. For those of you who would like to work with me and have me help you raise money, then please do the questionnaire and set up a time to talk with me. As I said, I'm a fundraiser in my DNA. As soon as anybody says a movie, there's a thing up here in my brain that starts adding up where all the money's coming from. It's like I just can't help it. It's like, where's the money coming from? So I really, really love it. And I shared a little bit about, oh no, I didn't share about this, but I grew up in a family where there was a lot of violence, and it was always directed. I was always being strangled. And I'm very clear that my purpose on this earth is to help people get their voice out. And it's taken me a lifetime to get my own voice out. And you can hear now, you can't shut me up. But I didn't used to be that way. And I happen to do it with film. I happen to do it with fundraising. And I find that fundraising is an amazing way to practice getting your voice out. And it's an amazing way to ensure that you get your films made. So that's why I'm so passionate about it, and I love it. So I do hope that I will be working with you. As I said, I'm going to add as a bonus for anybody who does sign up to work with me, I'm going to add as a bonus the Crowdfunding 101 class. I love to have everybody do a crowdfunding campaign anyway. Even my clients who are raising a lot more money, I think it's great to do a crowdfunding campaign. So thank you everybody for all your time and all your attention. It's been really fabulous meeting you. And some of us to meet again after so long, Olivier. So lovely to see you, Marjorie. I haven't seen for years. So thank you, everybody. If you want to unmute your and everybody say goodbye, that would be fun. We can have a goodbye from all over the world.
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Adios. Bye,
Bye. Bye.
Happy Friday.
Bye.
Happy weekend.
Bye. Bye.
Can't wait to see your films.